No,
Like, what?
I'm going to keep it down.
If I pull my hair up, do I look more like we didn't have one drink after the show last night? Do I look more alive? No answer? No answer?
Yeah, I'm like, my mind is processing like how you are so wrecked by one drink. I'm just like,
No, I'm not wrecked by one drink. I'm just tired. It
I'm
was not the
tired.
drink, it was the time. You know, I
Yeah.
think I got in bed after 10 p.m. on a Thursday, Nicole.
Yesterday was a lot. I haven't even processed all the things from yesterday.
I know.
It was so much.
And aren't we lucky to be blessed with a whole new day of new things?
I know, right? True that. Oh, okay.
But hey, welcome to Supercharged by AI. We're a podcast by AI Portland. I'm Megan Notarte, partner at Cloud4 and co-founder of AI Portland. As always, joined by Nicole Moores, co-founder of AI Portland and group design manager at Lithia Motors, and day after birthday girl.
Yes. In case anyone in Portland did not get the memo yesterday, it was my birthday. I have never had so many people tell me happy birthday in my life.
Well, I'm glad
I had people
I
was related to not tell me happy birthday, but like legit 100 semi-random people told me happy birthday.
It was so fun. So
it was fun.
If anyone questions Nicole's commitment to what we do at AI Portland, know that she scheduled this event yesterday on her actual birthday. And so
it was a blast.
It was super fun. We had cake.
I can't imagine spending my birthday a better way. Well, maybe there's a couple of things.
I can think of some things that might be more fun.
But it was great. It was great.
This is a lot about you. So yesterday's event was all about AI policy. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time because I feel like we have been getting a lot more questions about this as people's understanding and sort of exposure to AI tools evolve. People are like, cool. So what am I supposed to tell my company, or what am I supposed to tell my team? And I was really looking forward to exploring that with people who are on the ground, who know what they're supposed to say. So we had Nicole on our panel. So not only on her birthday was she like, yo, I want to have an event, but she also was like, yo, let me be on this panel. I want to talk about this. And we had, let's see, Suzanne Tong, who is a AI Portland superstar, for the record.
Yeah, she's a returning champion.
She was one of the coolest at our science fair, but also like a really awesome marketing executive who went through policy development at the company she was at, and it didn't go to plan. It didn't go the way that it was like not an ideal path, it sounded like. So it was very interesting to hear her perspective. We had Lindsay Washburn with the AI governance group. So she had like a very what's the word, Nicole? Like just a very thorough understanding of policy, and not just at like a corporate level, but at like public policy level. That was very interesting. And then we had Jordan Plonner, who former 27 years at Intel. He's now runs a part of a consulting group that helps companies identify areas where AI can be used. So he's advising folks on how to institute policy. And you got to talk about your kind of current effort with AI policy with your team too. So did I nail all of our people? They were amazing.
Did. That was amazing table setting.
Oh man, for everyone who's watching this, we're a little rough this morning in terms of like energy. It's early. It's early. It's always early.
It's super early, and we went over to the bar next to Kiln where we had the event and had a birthday drink. Just one drink, but sometimes when you're of a mature age, just staying out late and having a birthday drink will slow you down.
It was late, you know?
It was late.
I came home, I had a bagel, I went to bed. Does anyone else have a 10 p.m. bagel? That's what I did.
Good for you, Megan.
I love a bagel. All right, let's talk about policy. You know, I was moderating, but I took lots of notes because I am particularly interested in this anyway. And I think the thing that stuck with me a lot was how it can be very overwhelming. And if you go too far with your policy, you can kind of back yourself into a corner. So the overwhelming consensus was okay, you start with an acceptable use policy, right? Which is like table stakes, it feels like.
Yeah. I think one thing that the breadth of our panel really illuminated to me as far as overall problem space with things like policy is there's a messy middle, right? You have the folks at the top who arguably should be responsible for doing these things. They don't know how, right? So you have people like Jordan and Lindsay. It's like, oh, you have to do this and that. And then you have people at the end of the spectrum that are like, yo, this thing is happening now. We need to be using these things now. And there's this gap in the spectrum that's really confusing,
Yeah.
So I think it's really hard to bridge that gap in conversation about something as broad as policy or as big as policy.
Yeah. And I also, when you say the messy middle, I feel like that also, it's true that a lot of these problems we're experiencing or these concerns we're experiencing right now are right now problems. And they really are issues that you need to worry about. You need to think about how your team is using AI. You need to think about these tools, what's happening to your data, all of those things. But there will be a point where I think Jordan said this, Copilot has been approved for your organization. Use Copilot. You as a team leader or whatever, you don't have to stress out as much about how people are using Copilot. They need some basic AI literacy, that education that you and I continue to do, I think is still very important. People still need to know that. But maybe you don't have to stress out about Copilot. You should be looking at that, what did someone talk about? BYO AI, people who are bringing their own AI tools and not telling anybody about it.
Right.
Those are the places that you probably want to explore, which I thought was true. It's a moment in time thing, but this moment in time is important and critical.
Yeah, totally.
What else did you get?
I think I sort of shirked your original question.
Did you?
Yeah. I mean, just going back to the sort of guidelines, fundamental guidelines for your team is the good starting place. Well, at both ends of the spectrum, right? For you yourself, developing a set of fundamental knowledge and guidelines, educating yourself about what you should and should not use AI for in the workplace specifically, right? And then if you're at the management level, a policy really is just a set of, hey, do this, don't do that, right? It doesn't have to be something super complicated. It really could just be a set of things, and then at the bigger executive level, that gets more complicated. But at the end of the day, policy is a big word, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. You really just have to start zero at one, 0 to 1.
Yeah. And even for me, when we talk about data governance, right? and like policy, those words are big and they sound
are
really overwhelming, and you're just like, and if you have a company and you have a legal team and you have all of that stuff, like you're probably not, instead you might be like fighting with your legal team about how to like allow you to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And for those folks, like, you might have the tools that you already need. But like, I think for people who don't have that, or people are bringing in AI tools to your team that's sort of like shadow AI or shadow IT, like that stuff feels like you can't do anything because you're just like, I don't know about governance, right? But like creating an agreement with your team on the things that are okay and the things that are not okay, that's acceptable use. Like that's not
Totally. 100%.
that's not as scary when you're just like, hey, we're designers. Like, these are our core values already. Like, this is how that applies to the technology that we have in front of us right now. Don't put company data in public chat GPT, like those kind of rules.
Yeah. I think Jordan even said it, shadow IT and people using unsanctioned tools has always been a thing. Always.
Yeah.
Maybe the risks and scale are different with AI, and that changes it a little bit, but like these are not new problems.
No. Then yes, the scale is different, but it's we find that so often that these things that everyone's worried about, we're like, yeah, that's just, it's like kind of the same thing that we've been worried about.
Even
like,
with data governance, privacy, like these are the original problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just
right.
exacerbated by new technology. Yeah,
exactly. I think it was Lindsay who was like, start with an acceptable use policy, and then the next thing is training. Training is not a policy, right? But it is like foundational to people understanding what is in front of them. And like, if you understand what's in front of you, you're probably less likely to do something that puts company IP at risk.
Yeah. Do you when we're talking about training, and I know I feel this, and that it's really hard to go to your team and be like, hey, here's this thing, here's how to use it, here's what to do, here's not, like the amount of work you have to do to educate yourself. I think some people will go off and be like, oh, that's easy, I know exactly what to do and what to say, and I feel like I know everything and I'm ready to tell everybody what to do. There's a lot of people that take great responsibility in being a leader and guiding. And so if you yourself don't know where to go or where to start, how do you guide other people?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the amount of work it would take to upskill, uplevel yourself in order to be able to confidently and responsibly guide your team in this moment. I don't think that's a small thing to take on.
No, but I also think it's like someone has to do it. So if you're a leader, someone has to do it, and someone is going to do it. Right? You just might not know about it, and you certainly don't want that kind of a culture where people are quietly doing things that maybe make their job a lot easier, but they're scared to tell you about it.
Right.
So like I think you're right. It's not a small thing. One of the things that we find that is that like, there, of course, there's a lot of hype around AI. There's a lot of like, it's going to solve all of our problems. And then when you get in and you try to find use cases that really, really work for you and your team, that it's actually really hard to do. And you feel like maybe you're dumb, right? And like, so what I'm saying is that it's really hard, but this technology is here. It's coming at you from lots of different directions, and someone has to sit with it and tease out like what actually can help your team. What is like, y'all, this is not ready for us. Like, I can see where it's going to be. I see what people are saying. What does Ethan Mollick say? This is the worst version of AI you're ever going to work with.
I mean, hopefully the chat interface as like a way to interact with the model is not good. It's not good. It's hard.
It's hard.
You know? It's hard. It's not easy. And like, I think it's very misleading to be like, I can just like boop, 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 beep, boop, and get like something that's going to like save my job or save the world or like end world hunger out of this chat interface, you know?
Yeah. It's hard. And I mean, I know that you have specifically done this recently, but even when we are working on demos for our talks, right? It's like really important to me and you that like we do demos that are real, that like this is a thing, this is data someone has access to, like for their job, this is the output, this is what it would really look like. And, you know, my experience with that is like, I probably for every 3 demos that we actually put in a talk, I've done 10 or 15 that like I'm like, this actually is not helpful in my specific use case. Like you're really having to dig for the use cases. And so when we're talking about like leadership, like it's hard. You're right. It is hard, but worth it that somebody does it, that somebody tries to find the use cases that are helpful. Worth it? Oh, she has a look of like, I'm not sure.
I do. I'm like, I'm so, maybe it's because I'm in the trough of disillusionment a little bit.
We all? Join us here.
I can almost see how, like, if you're a high level executive, how you could sit back and be like, well, I know AI is coming to all these tools. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's worth the investment that it would take to go and educate everybody on an unproven technology, because the investment would be a lot,
Yeah.
Or I just hedge my bets, wait, and we'll all have Copilot. We'll all have this or that.
Yeah.
Like I could kind of see how the ROI would not check out.
I mean, it probably depends on your business, right?
Totally.
And what you're doing. And it comes back to, I'm just always surprised that I know it's only been like a year, but how much the fundamentals of the things that you and I talk about a lot are the things we constantly come back to. Like, what do we know this stuff is good at? Right? Mm-hmm. Identify the things that stuff is good at. Identify your actual business problems you're trying to solve. Right?
Oh, 100%.
Problem. Start with the problem that you're trying to solve. I think Jordan talked about this yesterday too. Don't start with, I need to add AI to whatever. No, what are you trying to do? You're trying to, reduce boring work, drudgery for your employees so they can do cooler, high-powered, very human things, right? Mm-hmm. In what areas? And then align those two things. What is AI generally good at? What are your business problems? And those are the places that it's like, let's see if there's a way here to make things better. People are experiencing big productivity gains, but I think they're being really thoughtful about those things.
Totally.
Right? It's not just throw ChatGPT on everything. Also, maybe it's not ChatGPT. Ooh, man, Claude is a good friend, isn't it?
I have been digging on Claude. I might cancel my ChatGPT subscription. I know.
It's just so
I feel like the robots just heard me say that, There
are robots listening.
ChatGPT, there's some things I really like about its functionality. That isn't included in Claude yet. But I feel like Claude's, I do. Okay, I'm about to say something. I feel like Claude's my friend. You know?
Shit.
I'm like, hi, Claude. It's me again. Can you help me? Sorry
to what I'm trying to do
again. But
sorry to bother you.
I really like your help with another thing. Can we just talk it through?
Oh yeah, you've gone deep on Claude. I like Claude a lot too. When we do like role playing stuff, Claude is definitely like a more human like robot to interact with. I said person.
Yeah. Person. I call him he. It's really hard for me to call Claude an it. He's so nice to me. He's so nice to me. I think this is more about like maybe my life than like Claude technology. As a tool. Yeah.
That's a whole other podcast, girl.
I know, right? But yeah, I've been using Claude on a few different things. One of which was creating some content around AI Portland. I wanted this content to sound more like me, so I uploaded some writing samples. They're just old blog posts and things that I've written in the past for various jobs and just for myself. And I'm like interacting with Claude, like honing the content that I'm creating, and Claude's like, giving me insight into my writing style as I go. Like, I love how your thought process on design and the intersection of da da da. And I'm like, thanks, Claude. That's really nice, you know? But it does feel interactive. Like you are kind of working with another person. You're brainstorming, you're workshopping. It feels really like creative in the moment when you're getting that feedback, that interaction.
Yeah.
Like you would if you were sitting in a room with someone. Well, maybe not quite as much as if you were sitting with someone and they had all your writing style in their brain and was like
and their whole
referencing
job
it.
was to just
Work
be
with
there
you.
for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a satisfaction to that. That's really nice.
Yeah. Last night we also talked a lot about culture, which I think is interesting because we came to the table to talk about policy, which is, I guess, obviously related, but so much of it came back to creating a culture of experimentation and accountability. Those two things I thought were really interesting. And ways of making it safe for people to play around with things, because I think there is a stigma especially if your company is, or your team is like not on board, or just not even, maybe just not talking about it, that like if you're using, I've felt this before, if I got a huge gain from using productivity or from using ChatGPT or Claude to like help me draft a thing, which we all know is like really good, it's really good at, if sometimes I do feel like, oh, I'm embarrassed a little because like I didn't do all of that. Like I started it, I messed with it.
Yeah.
But like, wow, that whole thing came out of there. Like I can see how that, if you're trying to get people to understand the limits and the opportunities, having a culture where people feel like they can come together and be like, oh my God, you got this amazing thing is important.
Yeah. I feel like if we're just talking about people working on a team for a second and we ignore sort of like the higher level conversation, there's like so many different ways that this could either be amazing or horrible, right? Like you use ChatGPT, you don't want to tell anybody because you're kind of embarrassed that you used it. You don't want people to think that you need help, a crutch, you know what I mean? You don't want to sort of degrade your reputation as someone who could just go and write a thing, other people seeing you writing all this stuff and producing all this stuff so fast, but not knowing you're using an AI tool might think, dang, I got to work extra hard. I got to work nights and weekends. Look at the productivity. Yeah. I'm not like that productive. They might have no idea that like you're using these tools, and that's why you're able to like move through as many things as you are. That sucks, So yeah, I think creating this culture where people know how to responsibly use it and are encouraged to go out and find the use cases and then share them, right? Because to your point earlier, it's not super easy to identify the use cases and then get things
not
set
always.
up.
Yeah,
that to where it is kind of autonomous, so we kind of need each other to help do that work. And so if you don't have a culture where we're talking about these things, sharing what worked and what didn't, it could get really weird and kind of awful.
Yeah. And thinking back to what we were talking about before, where you were talking about how hard it is for like someone in leadership to like learn how to do this stuff. Maybe you only have to do that one time. Like you set up a really clear use case of, hey team, this is an area where this tool can really, really help us. Here's a prompt. Here's some prompt library stuff. So like we'll make it a little easier for you. And then you set the stage for them to start experimenting and for that sharing to happen.
Yeah.
Now you don't have to be the one who's like, okay, cool, here's another use case. Like you've created an environment where people are like, oh, individuals know their job better than anyone else, right?
Totally.
Like, here's a place where like, whoa, that didn't work at all, y'all. Or
yeah. That's exactly what I did with my team, right? The policy was essentially never, never, never put company information into any tool, right? And even the internal AI tools that we have, and there's a couple, you also have to think before you put stuff in there. Sure, you could share no PII ever, please, but you could put, actual company things that you would not put in a public facing tool into our internal tools. But know that whatever you put in there, the company is going to see. So
it could see. Well,
yeah,
you have an internal audience, so it's
you
the same.
do.
I mean, I think last
the
night,
external versus internal.
Yeah, somebody was talking about how I think we've heard these stories where like a company was using an AI tool for like email or something, and somehow it also had access to all compensation, and it emailed everyone all the like everyone else's compensation. Something
Yeah,
like that.
I mean, that's a whole nother story. Like, why are we hiding compensation from people?
Sure,
like,
I was thinking that too, and then I was like, well, this is America.
Yeah, totally.
But it could be
Capitalism,
anything, right? It could be. There's plenty of personnel information that shouldn't be shared broadly, and they thought they had walled it, but they hadn't.
Yeah.
Also, like we talked about this last night too. Like again, some of these problems are not specific to AI. Like that should have been tested.
Right? Oh, 100%. Like, yes.
That should have been tested.
People are going to right? And they're going to make mistakes. Yeah. So the policy is, please think about what you're putting in and how you're using it. Right. Yep. Also, this isn't meant to do your job. If you think you can just copy pasta and paste what comes out of it and use it, you are going to run into those mistakes, right? And you have to make sure you're editing. Nothing can go out. There's still an amount of work to be done after you use the tool.
That was the like accountability part of what we were talking about, and it comes back to our favorite concept, which is human in the loop. Every time people come back to our favorite concept, my heart like grows a little bit, because I think you and I both feel like this is fundamental, that like we should be prioritizing the humans in this process. We should be amplifying what humans do well. These tools shouldn't replace us. They should make us better, like all of that stuff. And hearing that from this panel was like, yes, in the same way, like these tools should be augmenting your team. You have a responsibility as the human in the loop to do your job, which means that output doesn't just go automatically, for sure, but also not even by you copying it and pasting it in.
Yeah.
Like you have to do your job. You have to read the thing. You have to think about it. Don't just read it, but be like, is that saying what I wanted it to say?
Totally.
It speaks so authoritatively.
So that is the guidelines, right? That's the policy, right? And then that's not that complicated,
It's not as scary.
And then you're like, hey, I have this one use case that I feel has value and works. And let me show you how it works. And let me show you around the tool. And then you go and find out what works for you, and then come back and share it with all of us,
Yeah, and we can all learn.
Yeah. And so just creating that safe space, creating spaces for people to talk about it, lunch and learns, task force.
Friday show and tell.
Yeah, Friday show and tell. I think it was Suzanne that said her company does trivial things that have very low stakes.
Zero stakes.
Go off.
Yeah,
zero stakes. Like go off and write a limerick using ChatGPT, and we'll come back and share that.
Suzanne's experience was so interesting. And if you are someone who's really wants to get into some nitty gritty on this, like real life experience, she had so much stuff she did not get a chance to talk to us all about. No, I know.
I feel like that's a whole thing in and of itself. That's why I was like, Suzanne, how much AI Portland appetite do you have in you? Because I feel like there's more there that I would love to see,
Yeah. But I loved her. So their company, basically legal, had their policy was very onerous. It became very difficult within the policy to use tools at all. So they learned a lot. But I like the zero stakes experimentation idea, which was like, so it's not even within the context of the work that you're doing. It was more like, like anything. You're going to use it for a limerick or to get a cookie recipe or something. Like those, the way, if you believe that this is something your team needs to understand at some point, finding ways in that feel approachable and like zero stakes. Like, it's cool. If your limerick is bad, who cares? You know?
Right.
That, I think, was very enlightening on how you can start to bring your team along, and especially in certain like certain areas where people might be more resistant than others.
Yeah, totally.
She also made the point that like you have to now allow people to opt out, which I thought was interesting because I don't know, depending on your business.
Here's the thing, like there are many feelings about this technology. We know that, Megan. She talked about the designers on our team, right? And a lot of designers feel like this technology is a fundamental threat to their craft industry, what have you. Yes and no. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's never black or white.
It's always both. Yeah.
Here's the thing, and we touched on this a little bit last night too, like people being like, this can't happen because it's going to replace my jobs, the layoffs, yada, yada, yada. It's coming. You know what I mean? So I understand the angst and like the aversion to like being like, no, this is like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to opt out of this. But I feel like that is not an option.
Yeah. I also think like in the last year, things have changed a lot. The conversation has, I mean, obviously, like I can't keep up. Other people are not keeping up. And that's okay. But I think earlier this year, I might have agreed with that a little bit harder than I do now. You know, that just things have evolved enough that I feel like, I mean, you and I have said this from the beginning. The reason we created AI Portland is because we think people need to come off of the sidelines. So maybe it's not a surprise that you and I are both like, I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. So I'm very much, like I said, I now, after this year, have seen a lot of things, talked to a lot of people. There's so much hype. That hype is leading to the anxiety as well. You know, it's a snake eating the tail, eating the snake circle thing.
Snakes and tails? Yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
And that's the title of this episode. Snakes and tails.
Snakes and tails. Happy birthday. Yeah, it's just like leading, like it's the problem is leading to more anxiety, and it's like if you go and like use it, you will immediately see where the edges are. You will.
This is the like closet monster.
The bounds of it, like it is a lot of work to like figure out how to make things autonomous. And isn't that the promise of AI, is that it's going to just do the things we don't want to do? Right now, today, it is hard to get it to do that if you
on your specific use case, like depending on what it is. Yeah.
You really have to use it's creative thinking even to be able to pick it out, tease it out,
or create something that engineering thinking. You have to like design the thing. You have to think about what your inputs and outputs are, and like
it's basically engineering at the end of the day. Like you have everyone, and then like the technical expertise you would need, there's just like a gap, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I do.
And
I
the
agree
tooling
with that.
right now, a lot of the tooling we're seeing is just wrappers around ChatGPT and stuff like that. They're like a thing that sits on top and is like
injecting prompts, like they're injecting more prompting in.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like a very thin presentation layer on top of just the chat interface. Some of them are just like direct, just like another chat interface on top of the chat interface, essentially. You know,
I mean, that
we're
speaks,
ways off,
I think, to the place we are, right?
Totally.
If you look at hype cycle, we talk about this a lot too. Love me a hype cycle graph. There's a lot of hype at the top of that roller coaster. And we're definitely coming down to this like trough, right? Where we're disillusioned and we're like, oh, screw it. This stuff doesn't deliver on what it's going to deliver on. but we end up in a place where we figure out how it works. I wonder how that plays out with this type of technology that like is changing so quickly, and it's not small incremental changes, it's kind of big leaps. And I sort of wonder, do we go through this like that roller coaster, you know, hype to disillusionment? Is this like so over and over again?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it does all come back to the problems, right? The problems that we're trying to solve. Is AI going to create full-fledged designs and put designers out of a job? No. Put your eyebrows back down. Absolutely not. You know what I mean? It can't. It absolutely can't. Not today, and I will eat crow tomorrow if it can, you know? But you have to identify the problems you have and ask yourself, is there a way I can solve this? I had a problem on my team. I want people to do research, and it seems too big to do when they're in like the weeds of a project, right? So I'm like, how it started out as like, how could they create, like describe what kind of research they're going to do? And I'm like, oh, they could just do ChatGPT. Well, ChatGPT has no context. It can't just create a research plan out of nothing with no information, right? So I want people to do research. What I really want is them to ask the questions about what they're trying to figure out. A lot of designers will just go off and be like, oh, I took a screenshot of a competitor. That's research. No, I want them to develop a point of view, right? So I went and engineered a prompt that takes our research guidelines of what kind of research to do and when, and then the product brief, and we'll create an appropriate research plan and generate a set of questions to ask based off of the guidelines and based off of the product brief, right?
Yeah.
I don't really care if that, I mean, the output is good and it's consistent. They should not be using it word for word. And I don't care if they use it at all. If they go in and take the guidelines and take the brief and have a set of questions to start from, I've already won. I'm getting like
you're getting more
to think about a POV and not just go off and like take a screenshot of a competitor and call that research. You know what I mean? So it's like, the problem is not necessarily like, do I need ChatGPT to create a design for me? The problem is I want designers to ask smart questions, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome because you're empowering them in a way that they weren't empowered before, or they didn't know how to get started. Like they're going to do better work that way. That's great.
But it's almost a Trojan horse, you know what I mean? And it is creative problem solving because I'm using it to help them just get started from 0 to 1, you know? So but identifying all of that and putting it together, that's the trivial part. And with the tooling we have now, inconsistent and
it was hard. It took you a while to figure out
and time consuming. You know what I mean? Yeah. But at the end of the day, it starts from like, what is that original problem that you are trying to solve? And it's not do my job for me. It's a smaller nugget, you know?
Yeah. When I said earlier, I was like, someone needs to do the work and it's worth it. And you were a little dubious, but I feel like this was a really great example of you doing that hard work and it being worth it for your team.
We'll see. Let me get back to you with some metrics. Let me get back to you on some metrics.
A full report, Nicole.
About how this goes, if it's used, you know.
Well, I mean, but
if our research quality increases, you know.
It's worth it to try. I mean, it's worth it to try.
Yeah.
I feel like we just had our own Friday show and tell. I mean, Friday tell and tell.
Oh my God. That. We should do that. We should do an AI Portland Friday show and tell. That would be amazing. We could do it in the screen too. People have been hot for screen things.
They really have. My show and tell is, I mean, I'm not going to show anything, but I had been really getting down with NotebookLM. And if you are unfamiliar, NotebookLM is a tool by Google powered by Gemini, which to be honest, I don't use Gemini a whole lot. But it allows you, you create notebooks of different kinds of content. So like maybe websites or articles or even YouTube videos. And you can kind of group them by whatever logical grouping you have. And it'll synthesize that data. You can have it like you can choose different articles and have it summarize like a subset of them. The thing that's been the most buzzy is that it will make a podcast based on the content that you put in your notebook. And I used it a lot in preparation for our conversation with Senator Ron Wyden. Shout out if you haven't watched that. It's now on YouTube, so you can go watch that. But, I needed to have some foundational background on what the senator has done, what his position is on technology. And so being able to like basically pin or bookmark all of this stuff that I was finding throughout the internet and then have it generate like a paper for me to read. And then also a podcast I could put in my ear when I'm in my car and just be like sort of getting the information in a couple of different ways was really, really powerful and really, really cool. I feel like your dog in your background is like, I'm boring them. I'm boring Gary with my notebook.
It's not Gary.
It's Cha-Cha.
I put her outside and then she was crying and then I'm like, snores or dog cries?
I will take this.
I don't know.
This is so funny.
I know. It's like, oh, she's still talking. I'm like,
oh my God, NotebookLM. I'm so bored.
NotebookLM is not boring. It's an amazing way to
it's very cool.
Just the research organization and like synthesis and like everything in a like neat little. It's just something very satisfying about that. You know what I mean? As a tool, like, regardless of the podcast aspect.
100%. Like, I feel like we're missing in the internet right now this like early internet idea of like bookmarking and like keeping content. I'm sure there are tools that do this. I just don't have one. Like Pinterest, but not for picture-y stuff, I
mean, there's like, so I'll always like shout out Notion because I'm a huge fangirl of Notion. Like you could create something like that in Notion for sure. Yes. But like it feels like a lot of work. You know what I mean?
Yes. Or I would like use Obsidian and just keep track of my stuff. But like this, it's so nice to organize it. So without the podcast, like I found it very useful. I could create a notebook that was just around like federal policy on technology. And then I could create a notebook that was all about Senator Wyden. The podcasting thing is so cool. I will say with a caveat, which is the first time you listen to a podcast by NotebookLM, you're like, oh my gosh, holy crap, these people sound real. Mm-hmm. And they've had a major release since I last used it, which just speaks to the AI world that we live in.
Moves so fast.
You can like now configure it a little bit. But this week, I think you and I both signed up for this like 5-day generative AI intensive through Google. And neither one of us have had time to do all of it. But I started with the first thing. I got halfway through the first thing, and it involved reading this paper, Foundational Generative AI Concepts, and they had a NotebookLM podcast. This one was like 30 minutes or longer. Mm-hmm. And definitely I was like annoyed with these robots, after about 15 minutes because you see the patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it does weird things and you're like, that was weird. Like, so do I though. I do weird things.
True. Does the Notebook podcast have intermittent dog snores in the background?
No. And I really feel like it's worse for that.
Yeah.
Like there's no dogs barking at all.
Yeah.
What kind of professional outfit is this?
I don't know. We should leave a comment. Let's give some feedback.
I feel like we could use some more Gary all the time. Oh, Cha-Cha. Love you too.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's been a place that I've spent some time recently and it's been pretty cool. And, I actually think it did help me in a way that would have been much harder to do without it to prepare for that event. Not super revolutionary. I also used it to help me prepare for a book club, so.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, like, there's lots of uses. I also use like the being able to talk to the advanced voice mode or whatever in ChatGPT to help me prepare for book club. So I was super busy and we had book club a month ago, I think. And I, as Nicole knows, once I finish a book, poof, gone from my brain. Like, just like
did you even read it?
Happened.
Yes. It's like it's mind-boggling because I'm like, I am
not alone. I'm not alone. There are many people like me that just like, it's just gone. So it's hard to have book club. Like if I finish the book like 2 weeks before, I have to really try to remember. So I was like unloading groceries and making dinner, and I was using the advanced voice mode on ChatGPT to talk to it and be like, remind me of the main characters of this book. And then it would fun. It would tell me things, and I'd be like, okay, what happened at the end again? And I could interact with it, and I didn't have to interact with it in a text way, and I didn't have to be sitting at my computer. I could just like be taking my phone as I was unloading my car.
That makes me feel helpful. Like, do you even need book club, right? Because I like I finish sometimes I finish a book and it's like inside me. You know what I mean?
Books are.
And I'm like, I have to Google, what did other people think about this? You know what I mean? But it hadn't occurred to me that I could have a whole conversation with ChatGPT about the book and maybe satiate that. I'm gonna try it next time.
I see. Like, do I even need book club? Because if I really want to talk about this book, I can just talk to the robot. No, you need to talk to me about your books still.
That's true.
I mean, when we read the same thing. And if you do it when I've immediately read it, I definitely have thoughts.
Okay. Well,
I have to prepare if it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to chat about today?
Shoot, I think that's the end. I feel way more awake than when we started this. This like energized me. This is life, Megan. Podcast is life.
Podcast is life. You heard it here. Nicole loves the podcast now.
I don't know about that. I don't know
We're
about that.
14 episodes in or something.
I do feel better than when we started. When we started this, I was like, Megan, number one, I don't listen to podcasts. Number two, like I never in my life did I ever wake up and think, you know what I want to do? A podcast ever. This has been all Megan. The road has been long for me, but I feel like I think 2025 will be my podcast year.
Oh yeah.
I put it out there now.
Speaking of 2025, y'all, we got some plans. They're going to come together. We get to spend some time together in December, like planning and dreaming and everything. So I'm really excited about what we have ahead. It's been a crazy, amazing year. We're going to have an episode where we talk about all the things that like happened this year and what we learned, and maybe we'll be able to touch into some of the things we are thinking about for next year. But stay tuned. Hit that subscribe button. I don't know. What do people say? I'm not an influencer. Anyway, thank you. Thanks, Nicole. And thanks to our panelists for imparting their wisdom with us, and for everyone who showed up and like continues to have this conversation with us, because I think with this technology, these conversations are really, really important. So
get on your bike and ride with someone into work, show them the way.
Awesome. All right. We're done.